But first, tonight we are learning that an incoming member of Congress may not be exactly who he says he is, or in fact may not be anything like who he says he is, just weeks before being sworn in. Representative-elect George Santos from Long Island flipped New York's 3rd district from blue to red, but tonight there are so many holes being poked into his bio that even the GOP chair of Nassau County that Santos will be representing is calling for Santos to explain himself. Santos beat Democrat Robert Zimmerman by 8 points, but he's now accused of misrepresenting everything from his life story to his education, charitable work, even his basic work history. Oh, and there's a criminal charge against him, too. My question before we get to the details of this is who was in charge of the Oppo research on him? How did the media miss so much of this, and why are we learning about so much after the election? Now, according to his website, Santos is the son of Brazilian immigrants and a first-generation American born in Queens, New York, the first openly gay Republican to win a House seat. But in a new report, the New York Times took a deep dive that either debunks or poses questions about so much of his background and resume. According to his website, Santos says he's a seasoned Wall Street financier and investor with stints at Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Met Global. The incoming congressman-elect says after college he worked at Citigroup, rising to an associate asset manager in the company's real estate division. The Times reports that a spokeswoman for Citigroup said they couldn't confirm Santos ever worked there, and went further, saying she was unfamiliar with Santos's self-described job title and that Citigroup sold off its asset management operation in 2005 before he claims he even worked there. Santos claimed he worked at Met Global and Goldman Sachs following his time at Citigroup. Spokesman for Goldman Sachs told the Times no record of Santos working for them either. The Times also tried to reach out to co-workers to confirm his employment at these companies. Couldn't find any, in part because he never specified when he worked at each one. When it comes to his education, again, more discrepancies. Santos says he graduated from Baruch College in 2010 with a BA in economics and finance, but the Times found the school couldn't find any records of anyone matching his name of date or birth or the year he graduated. Oh, and then there's the criminal charge against him from that same time when he was supposedly at Baruch College. According to Brazilian court records uncovered by the Times, Santos allegedly stole the checkbook of a guy his mother was caring for. Police and court records show that Santos used the checkbook to make fraudulent purchases, and 2 years later, they say Santos confessed and was later charged. A bio on the National Republican Congressional Committee website also says he studied at NYU. But an NYU spokesman couldn't find records of him attending that school either. And there is more, much more. Santos also said he ran a nonprofit animal rescue organization called Friends of Pets United for 5 years starting in 2013. IRS couldn't find any records of a charity with that name. And the New York and New Jersey Attorney General's offices couldn't find records of that nonprofit registered as a charity. The organization did hold a fundraiser back in 2017 along with a New Jersey animal rescue group, charged $50 a ticket. The event's beneficiary said she never got any of the funds and claimed she only got excuses from Santos on why he wasn't sending the money. His wealth is also coming into question tonight. The Times reports Santos lent his campaign more than $700,000 during the midterms, donated thousands more to other candidates. So how did he have that money? He reported a $750,000 salary and over $1 million in dividends from his company called the DeVolder Organization. Again, there's no record that his company exists, and it doesn't have a public website. His website claims it's a family firm that managed $80 million in assets. Times couldn't find anything to back up a family fortune in real estate that Santos claims he has. It gets worse. In an interview with WNYC, Santos claimed that 4 employees that his company died in 2016 in that Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. But according to the Times, none of the victims appeared to work at any of the firms he claimed. Santos also seemed to have faced some financial hardship between 2015 and 2017. Times found that Santos faced multiple eviction cases for owing thousands of dollars in overdue rent. And in 2021, said he faced housing issues as a landlord during the height of the pandemic, but the Times reports that Santos didn't list any properties in New York and required financial disclosure forms. Times says he tried to talk to Santos. He didn't respond. His lawyer releasing a statement today, not challenging any of the findings, but rather attacking the Times, saying, quote, on the verge of being sworn in as a member of the Republican-led 118th Congress, the New York Times launches this shotgun blast of attacks. It is no surprise that Congressman-elect Santos has enemies at the New York Times who are attempting to smear his good name with these defamatory allegations. As Winston Churchill famously stated, you have enemies? Good. It means that you've stood up for something sometime in your life. Here's the thing. Historians believe Churchill actually never even said that, by the way, even though he got credit for it years later. But that's not the point. Joining me now, two men who know Representative-elect George Santos well, his opponent in the midterm, Democrat Robert Zimmerman, and Grant Lally, a Republican who has also made a run for Congress in that district and is currently the attorney for the local paper, the North Shore Leader, which broke parts of this story on Santos back in September. Thank you both for coming on. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Bob, let me start with you. I presume you didn't know a lot of this information. Did your team fail to uncover it in the campaign?
Well, quite frankly, much of what was put out by the New York Times is very validating to many of the questions and issues we raised. And also, it's a great reflection of the courageous journalist and publisher like Grant Lally, who did such a wonderful job with the Leader in terms of raising these issues as well. Also, I must point out, people at Newsday did too. A lot of the questions and information were out there. The Times had, of course, the ability to take it to another level with their excellent investigative journalism and had the capacity to check out leads in Brazil and check out other opportunities here. But these issues were out there, and it's really, I'll tell you the truth, it's really not about a failing on anyone's part. It's about the fact that George Santos is a fraud. And in fact, the allegations that were raised about his finances, about his lack of full disclosure, his inability to answer questions, really demonstrate that he's unfit for public office. That's the issue on the table.
But it's too late for that, right? He's won. And that's why I guess I'm focused on the question of how did your team not uncover so much of this? And I guess you're saying it's resources, because the Washington Post had a story today saying that you guys had $22,000 or something allocated to research of this sort, et cetera. I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is, are you frustrated by your team's inability to have uncovered it?
Well, Dan, quite to the contrary. I'm very proud of the fact that many of the issues that were brought up by the Times and were raised by other media sources came about because of the opposition research done by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, came about because of many of the issues that we had also followed up on. And we had very brave publishers like Grant Lally who raised them as well.
Let me ask Grant Lally.
Let me finish the point, Dan.
Let me ask Grant, because you mentioned Grant.
I
want to go to Grant on this, because your paper did specifically have an editorial before the election, because this isn't just about after the election. Bob Zimmerman's right on this. Your paper had an editorial that said this newspaper would like to endorse a Republican for U.S. Congress, but the GOP nominee George Santos is so bizarre, unprincipled, and sketchy that we cannot. We endorse Democrat Robert Zimmerman. What is it that you had uncovered before this New York Times article that led you to think that he was sketchy?
Well, much of what the New York Times did, and it was actually great reporting, deep digging and reporting, we didn't know about. But what we did know about was his fakery. What we called, he's a fabulist. He makes up stories and just looks people in the eye and lies to them. And he did that to local elected officials, local Republican activists. People smelled this and they caught him in his lies. A lot of the local Republicans, and I'm a Republican, refused to have pictures with him because he was such a, as one elected official put it, a pathological liar.
So you're not really surprised?
No.
I mean, I have to tell you, as someone who wasn't following it that closely, I've known Bob Zimmerman a long time, so I did follow that campaign a bit. But I have to say that I didn't follow it that closely. I was stunned reading this New York Times article. I mean, it was shocking to me.
We published him, and he was widely known in Republican circles as George Scamtos this past summer.
Really?
Yeah. And we published that in a September article.
And so, Bob, was your team, again, not able to get mainstream national media attention, et cetera, of these sorts of allegations?
You know, one of the great frustrations, Dan, is that we heard, first of all, we heard a lot of the rumors. We had done some background looking ourselves. The DCCC did extensive work. And by the way, the Times reporting is absolutely heroic in terms of the depth and the insight and the investigative work they did. But one of the problems we had, and this is the nature of the media culture today, while we had reporters at Newsday who were interested, and some did some items, and Grant did just extraordinary work as the publisher of The Leader, we had many reporters who, frankly, quite acknowledged they didn't have the bandwidth to do the story. Some acknowledged to me that, and to our team, that frankly, it's only a news story if he gets elected. But I do want to stress to you, while I have my frustration, Dan, you're as a journalist. If I came to you with a lot of these different issues, you'd have to put a team on it.
You're right.
And commit the
It's
time
expensive to do. Grant, final thought on this?
On that same point, look, we're a local newspaper. we're a 77-year-old, well-established paper on the Gold Coast, but we're a small weekly newspaper. We have a dozen part-time reporters, some who do investigative work, some are actually high school kids. Yeah. So we don't have the
right.
depth. And just in Bob's defense, look, this was a highly compressed election cycle this year. Mm-hmm. These districts were not drawn until June because of the gerrymander that was undone and the court redrawing the districts. People had 2 weeks to get on the ballot. Then Bob fought a very hot Democratic primary. So he wasn't really the Democratic nominee until Labor Day.
All right. Well, look, you guys deserve a lot of credit for your paper having made, you're reading your editorial from back then that you wanted to endorse a Republican, but you felt this guy was too shady.
And he's honest.
It's just a shocking
story.
Thank you for that, Grant. Robert Zimmerman and Grant Lally, thank you both so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Happy holidays to you both.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.